So we're going to go ahead and get that started. All right.
I can hear yours, but I can't hear mine.
I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Welcome to your ViaQuest training for today. My name is Letitia, and I'm going to be guiding you guys through understanding dementia. So your objectives. So today you guys will be able to identify common signs and symptoms of depression, anxiety, and dementia. You guys will be able to identify behavioral symptoms that may be present with dementia, identify needs of a resident with dementia that can trigger behavioral symptoms, and even identify common environmental triggers for agitated or aggressive behaviors in residents with dementia. What is dementia? So, dementia is a collection of symptoms resulting from disease or injury to the brain. Dementia is progressive, which means it typically gets worse over time. Dementia is not a specific disease, but it's a group of symptoms that indicate there is damage in part of the brain that control memory, reasoning, judgment, and eventually bodily functions. There are a few causes of dementia that may be treatable, such as dementia caused by medications, brain tumors, or disruptions of hormones in the body. However, the types of dementia discussed in this presentation today are not curable, and current treatments tend to only slow the progression or improve some of the symptoms for only a limited period of time. So let's discuss what happens in the brain. So in conditions that cause dementia, channels for passing information between the neurons are damaged. The person can no longer think and act as they did before. So here we have the 5 A's of dementia. We're going to go into each one of the different A's as we move along over the next couple of slides. So each of these words refers to an aspect of human function that is disrupted by dementia. So remembering these words is only important to helping you remember the aspects of behavioral function that are affected by dementia. So first we have amnesia. Amnesia refers to the inability to remember. It is in the area of recent memory that amnesia is first seen in dementia. Recent memory allows us to store information for a short period, maybe a few minutes or hours or even a couple of days. So to be able to use information, we must be able to get the information into our brain and then store it, even if only for a few minutes. Individuals with dementia are often unable to store information for a short period of time. Long-term memory is the last to go because these memories are well stored within an individual's brain. A person with dementia may be able to describe aspects of their early life, such as their wedding day, but maybe they can't remember what they did like an hour ago. So for the person with dementia, the past is now their present. However, long-term memories are not always reliable. So what is remembered may not always be exactly what happened. As dementia progresses, even memories from long ago are now lost. Individuals with dementia often have language difficulties. So aphasia is the inability of a person to understand speech and or to produce understandable speech. It is seen in people who have had strokes that affect the language section of their brain, and is seen in dementia when the language center of the brain becomes affected. Individuals with aphasia may have no idea what is being said to them. It is as if you are speaking a foreign language. In other instances, individuals may understand what is said, but they can't express themselves in words. They can't remember the right words, or maybe they even jumble the words and have difficulty, or it's impossible to understand what they're saying. So, functional abilities or apraxia. So, this is when an individual can no longer perform tasks that they've done throughout their entire lives, like typical things that we've all done, like cooking, operating appliances, dressing, bathing, or even eating. So the ability to perform tasks that have long been pre-programmed for us is eventually erased in dementia clients, and sometimes with strokes and other forms of brain damage. Performing what were once daily tasks become too complicated for a person with dementia. So problems with recognition, that's also known as agnosia. So the brain stores images, and when we see something, we compare the image to images in our brain to know who or what we are seeing. So dementia can erase these images, and people with dementia may no longer be able to recognize common objects. For example, they may not recognize the shape of a toilet, or now they think like a flower pot because it's like the shape of a circle. They may now think that that's the toilet. So they could use the flower pot as a toilet instead. So they may not even recognize or maybe even misidentify some family members and friends who have been in their life for their entire life. And lastly, we have agitation. So when individuals with dementia have discomfort or cannot understand or tolerate things going on in the environment, they may become anxious or display signs of agitation. So a feeling of being uncomfortable and anxious is a fairly common response for all of us when we are confused, fearful, or even if we feel as if we have little control over what is happening to us. For a person with dementia, this is often shown in physical behaviors such as being jittery, very nervous, aimlessly pacing, or other behaviors indicating emotional discomfort. So let's discuss some behavioral symptoms of dementia. So the ability to make good decisions is often affected by dementia. This can result in people saying and doing things that are out of character. It can also place them in danger, such as walking into traffic, going to extreme cold without a coat or any type of protection, or even becoming the victim of a scam artist. Dementia causes people to no longer be able to understand the reactions of others or to respond by changing their behavior. Normally, we can understand and respond when our body tells us that we are hungry, thirsty, or if we need to urinate, or maybe even if we're cold or we're experiencing fatigue. But dementia changes the part of the brain that helps us to understand the signals that we are receiving from our body. A person with dementia will be uncomfortable, but may not be able to understand the cause of the discomfort and respond appropriately. As the part of the brain that controls behavior becomes damaged by dementia, it is not uncommon for people with dementia to say and do things that are considered socially inappropriate. They lose the ability to understand the difference between behaviors that are socially okay and those that aren't. They have lost their ability for their brain to tell them what not to do. So there are a number of common behaviors that are common amongst individuals with dementia. So memory problems and subtle behavior changes are evident in early dementia, while many of the more overt behaviors occur in persons with moderate to severe cognitive impairment. So here we have a list of common behaviors. We have wandering, which include orbiting. That's when an individual, maybe they start at one point, like the nurse's station, then they wander around and they continue to return to the same area. We have visiting. That's when a person will wander and then they'll tend to enter another residence room. Or we have shadowing. That's just like the name states. It's when an individual follows closely behind someone and they're just following behind them throughout the day. Then we have rummaging and hoarding. Some individuals with dementia have a tendency to rummage through drawers and closets as if they're looking for something. Others tend to gather up all sorts of items as if they were collectors. These behaviors are particularly a problem if they are rummaging through or hoarding other residents' possessions. Hoarding is also a problem when perishable foods or medications are hoarded. So repetitive behaviors. It's very common in individuals with dementia. These behaviors can become annoying and frustrating for you as the caregiver. Sometimes the individual with dementia, they may repeat the same behavior over and over. They can continuously like wash the same dish or tap their fingers or even repeat the same phrase over and over. You have continual pacing is seen when a person is walking aimlessly back and forth. Fidgeting is also common with individuals being in seemingly perpetual movement, like twisting a piece of clothing or constantly moving their chairs or moving their feet. Some repetitive behaviors appear to be attempts at self-soothing. This type of behavior is seen in other conditions with brain involvement, such as autism, developmental disabilities, and even brain injury. If the individual does not appear distressed, other residents are not adversely reacted by the behavior, and it's not jeopardizing anyone's safety, it may be best to just tolerate the behavior at that time. So the verbal behaviors can take many forms. So here we have a list of the most common non-aggressive verbal behaviors. So repeating questions and comments often occurs because the individual does not remember what they just said. It can become annoying for caregivers when they are asked, "What time is it?" several times within the same minute. But it does no good to become impatient or even scold your resident. It will not help them to remember anything any better or any faster. Constant repetition of the same word or phrase tends to occur in later stages of dementia. They literally get stuck on a word or phrase and can't seem to move onto a different phrase or activity. We also see babbling or even incoherently screaming or even moaning. So these are some of the more aggressive forms of verbal behavior. Here we see cursing, sexual or racial slurs, or even name calling. These can be quite distressing for family, particularly if the person was more so reserved and they never spoke harshly to or about others. It can also become difficult for staff when the names or slurs are directed at them. It is important to remember that the behavior is not intentional, but rather a result of the damage to the individual's brain. So physical aggression. This can be hitting, biting, kicking, pushing, or even spitting. It's estimated that physical aggression occurs with about 45 to 50% of people with dementia at some point. It is most likely to occur when the individual is frustrated, pressured to do things they can no longer accomplish, or simply if they're tired. Physical aggression needs to be managed for the safety of the individual, the residents, and you yourself as the staff. Further along, we're going to talk about different strategies for preventing and or diffusing aggression, as well as staying safe and keeping the residents and others safe. Inappropriate behaviors are those behaviors that tend to make others uncomfortable. They include such behaviors as disrobing or urinating in public, touching another person or oneself in an inappropriate area of the body, getting in bed with another resident without mutual consent, or even masturbating in public. Some of these behaviors occur due to the area of the brain that is affected by dementia. Many, though appearing on the surface to be sexual in nature, they're not. Others are the result of biological needs that the individual can no longer control. So before you can effectively respond to a behavior, it's important to determine what may be causing the behavior. So for that, you'll need to assess what's going on. A thorough assessment is often needed to determine the cause of a given behavior. Each behavior may have a different cause or be the result of different needs. So you want to make certain that you're assessing and responding to each behavior separately. So knowing the person's previous behavior and how they coped may help you to better understand their current behavior. However, dementia may result in someone who was once very friendly, warm, and kind, now becoming belligerent, angry, and or aggressive. Knowing the person's past personality can help caregivers know whether this is a manifestation of past coping mechanisms or maybe it's a new response to a behavior. For example, persons who typically become angry and aggressive when frustrated may show that response to events or demands in the environment that they cannot understand or control. People who have typically avoided frustrating circumstances or conflict may become withdrawn or even isolated. So first, we need to describe the problem behavior. So you want to look and start asking questions like, what is the real concern? You want to look at it carefully. It's not enough to just say that your resident is agitated or they're confused. The behavior has to be evaluated in terms of possible causes, potential for danger to self or even others, or for whom the behavior is actually a problem for. So if the person has recently moved to the facility or maybe they changed rooms within the same facility, it may take a couple of weeks before that behavior can be adequately assessed. So changes such as moves can either result in past behavior stopping for a time or new behaviors surfacing. Eventually, typical behavior patterns will emerge and then you can assess. It is the direct care workers who are usually in the best position to recognize changing patterns of behavior. So for long-term care facility workers, you're with the residents every day and you know them very well. You are in the best position to figure out what is triggering their behavioral symptoms. You're the eyes and the ears of the unit, and you can advocate for the resident. You have to look at yourself as being the detective, okay? Because again, you're the ones who are with them every day, so you know what their baseline is. From there, you can tell what is a new behavior and what is something that maybe was lying dormant. So, with you being the detective, behaviors are often triggered by physical needs of the individual. For example, maybe they're hungry or they need to use the restroom, or maybe there's even an environmental change, like a change in the noise or diminished lighting, or even a staff change that can cause an issue. So when you figure out what caused the behavior, you have a better chance of finding an effective approach to addressing the behavior and to prevent future episodes. So each behavior may have a different cause and need to be addressed in a different way. It is important, therefore, to assess each behavior individually and establish a plan for addressing each unique behavior. So remember, behaviors are just a form of communication. Your individual could be saying, they could be alerting you to let you know that something's not right. Maybe this is a warning that something else is coming further on down the line. Maybe they need you to pay attention to something, but they don't know how to get the words out to just tell you to pay attention. So it comes out in the form of a behavior. Or maybe they're trying to communicate that they need help with something. So just don't look at behaviors as a behavior. Just try to figure out what it is that they are trying to communicate. So changes in behavior that are often seen with dementia are related to the damage in the brain caused by Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. We now know that these behaviors are not random, but often an attempt to communicate discomfort, confusion, and other physical and psychological problems that the person is unable to express in any other way. The brain damage caused by dementia makes it impossible for the individual to communicate needs and feelings clearly through language. Pain, boredom, fear, anxiety, and other feelings are often expressed through noises, cursing, screaming, and nonverbal behaviors such as repetitive movements, and again, your wandering, inappropriate touching. So it is important to find the underlying reason for the behavior and then address the cause. So people with dementia have changes in behavior due to damage caused by the disease. They become unable to care for themselves. They behave in ways that are unlike their past behaviors and may put them in danger, and they can no longer express their feelings through language. So here are a few common changes. First, they may act in ways that they would not have done so before developing dementia. They may now start to make bad decisions. They can have problems understanding what they are feeling, or even have problems telling others how they feel. So, how common are behavioral symptoms of dementia? Every person with dementia will display some of the common behavioral symptoms. Something like forgetfulness, again, repeating words, wandering, or sundowning. More challenging behaviors can also occur, such as screaming or cursing, paranoid accusations, or even name calling. And again, about 45% of people with dementia may display harmful behaviors, such as hitting, pushing, or biting at some point. The best way to manage behaviors is to prevent them. So the way you communicate can keep a resident calm or can make the difference between calming a distressed resident or causing an escalation of behavior. Communicating with the resident who has dementia requires extra time and you have to be extremely patient. Calling the person by their name and being at eye level will be less threatening and it'll show your resident that you care for them and that you respect them. Studies have shown that residents are more likely to respond negatively when spoken in elder speak. So, elder speak refers to speaking to older adults as if they're children and using them and addressing them in such terms as sweetie, girl, honey, things of that nature. You want to avoid using those terms and refer to the resident only by their name. Always speak in a low and calm, reassuring manner and make certain that your nonverbal behavior is also reassuring. Residents who are displaying behavioral symptoms of dementia are often frightened, they're confused, and they're frustrated. If you display irritation or you attempt to pressure your resident and force them to do an activity, they will be further threatened and the unwanted behavior is likely to escalate. It's also important to give the resident time to respond. The damage in the brain caused by dementia results in information being received and processed more slowly. So rushing the person may result in added confusion and even frustration. So persons with dementia have a difficult time remembering what they are trying to communicate, especially if they're trying to communicate and they're being interrupted. So if they're interrupted, they're likely to become more confused and more agitated. So never interrupt and respect the conversation, regardless of whether it is being repeated or even if the conversation doesn't make sense to you. Don't interrupt them. In order to help a resident with dementia follow the instructions, you want to make certain that you're breaking each task into smaller steps. State only one or two steps at a time, or the resident will not remember what was said. People who speak English as a second language may forget it as their disease progresses. So as memory of language is destroyed, many people will remember and understand only their native language if they even remember that. So always show nonverbal signs of acceptance, caring, and affection. Residents with dementia will usually understand nonverbal behaviors, even if they do not understand spoken language. Some nonverbal indications of caring could be a smile, you could pat their shoulder, or even give a gentle hug around your resident's shoulder. So there are a number of triggers for behavioral symptoms in individuals with dementia. Here we have the time of day, also known as sundowning. We have discomfort, confusion, and fear. And lastly, we have boredom. These are some of the possible triggers for wandering, pacing, and fidgeting. There are some cases in which a trigger may not be easily identifiable, and the behavior seems to have no apparent cause. As we move on in this training, we will discuss the common triggers for certain behaviors, what may be some underlying causes, and what strategies may work to reduce or eliminate these behaviors when necessary. So wandering, pacing, and fidgeting are not particularly negative behaviors. They provide the individual physical exercise, which in turn improves circulation and keeps the person at a higher level of ability to move and transfer, which is a good thing. So it also provides the opportunity for social interaction for your resident. It is important, however, to make certain the individual does not have needs that are driving the behavior, which will need to be addressed. So if the individual is not found to be in distress of any sort, and the behavior is not a serious problem for staff or others, again, you can just tolerate the behavior and allow them to wander, pace, and fidget. Still, there are safety concerns with wandering, pacing, and fidgeting that you may need to address. So now we're going to talk about the safety of those individuals and how you address those needs. So it's always important to ensure that individuals who wander are as safe as possible, especially if they require assistive devices such as a walker or a cane for ambulation purposes. If they sometimes forget their cane or walker, you will need to give them their device and calmly remind them to use it. Whenever possible, it is desirable to provide a large room or area where individuals can wander without the possibility of getting out of the building or entering others' rooms. You want to remove all fall hazards from the areas where the individuals tend to wander, and you want to keep them in your line of sight. Protect the skin. Prolonged periods of movement can cause clothes and shoes to rub the skin. So you want to make certain that residents who walk or move around a lot have on comfortable, non-restrictive clothing and well-fitting, safe footwear. On a daily basis, check your residents' feet and other areas of the skin for redness, bruises, blisters, or any other signs of damage to their skin. So you want to ensure adequate food and fluids. So individuals who wander for long periods, they use large amounts of calories and they may not eat enough food to prevent unintended weight loss. So they may also not drink enough fluids and become dehydrated. So it's important to remember that people with dementia do not experience hunger and thirst normally as we would, and therefore they may not have or even understand the body sensations that tell most of us that it's time to eat or drink. So what you can do is place nutritious finger foods and bowls and baskets around the room where their individuals like to wander. You may need to actually physically hand the item or the snack to the individual because they may not remember to pick it up as they're wandering. You want to make sure that you have fluids easily accessible in the room. Again, you may need to assess them with getting those cups of water as well. And you want to carefully track food and fluid intake throughout the day. So reducing wandering. So you want to use behavioral assessment findings. So you want to ask questions like what appears to have triggered the wandering? Is wandering similar to past behaviors? Like think about the time of the day or the type of wandering. Is it aimless or are they trying to get to a specific room or are they trying to leave the facility as a whole? If this episode is new, is it different? You want to do a complete reassessment of that new behavior. And then you also want to think about what has worked to reduce wandering in the past. So the need for food or fluids may also drive wandering and other behaviors. So feelings such as hunger, needing to use the restroom, or just being bored cannot always be expressed verbally by residents with dementia. So wandering is sometimes an attempt for them to find food or even a bathroom, or just a response to being uncomfortable. You again have to be the detective to determine the possible cause. So it's important to determine if the individual is in some sort of distress rather than assuming the wandering is merely caused by confusion. So hunger, if it's near like time for a meal or the resident is not they haven't been eating well throughout the day, try giving them food to see if that can help. For fluids, it's important to keep older persons well hydrated. Remember, individuals with dementia may not sense thirst or be able to interpret that feeling. It is important to remind them to drink frequently. And then the need to use the bathroom. In some cases, wandering is just an attempt for them to find a restroom. You want to take individuals who tend to wander to the bathroom at a regular interval to see if this reduces their wandering. So some more strategies. Physical exercise. So wandering may be a response to the need for physical exercise. You want to provide exercise daily to allow your residents to satisfy the need for movement and to keep them healthier and more mobile. And then many individuals get bored when there are no activities and they are left on their own for long periods of time. Varied and structured activities throughout the day are more likely to reduce wandering. TV, having your individual sit in front of the television, that is not considered a structured activity. So television can be too stimulating for some residents with dementia, particularly in the evening, and it can lead to more agitated behaviors. So continuing on with boredom and how to prevent it, you want to provide simple tasks which allow your individual to feel useful and reduces the likelihood that they will devise their own forms of activities. You want to make certain that any activity provided, the individual is within his or her ability to perform. Complicated activities may lead to increases in frustration, anxiety, and undesirable activities. So, sundowning. So, individuals with dementia may wander at any time of the day, but for many, evenings and nights are times when such behaviors are more likely to become worse. So, toward the evenings, some residents become more agitated, confused, and they exhibit more wandering behaviors. So, this is often again referred to as sundowning. So we don't know for certain what causes sundowning, but it may be triggered by low light or some biological changes in the person. Things that appear to make the condition worse are tiredness at the end of a long day, confusion or fear caused by shadows in dim light, or too much or too little stimulation. Not being able to see or hear well also seems to aggravate the condition. So, some strategies to try to prevent or reduce sundowning. You want to reduce the intake of drinks or foods with stimulants like caffeine during the day, and do not give those types of things in the evening or at night. So, you want to try to avoid coffee, pop, chocolate, tea, those types of things. You want to provide sufficient exercise and stimulating activities during the day, and discourage your residents from taking long naps and keep them active throughout the day so that they're more likely to sleep at night. You also want to provide structured activities at times so that at the times where the resident typically starts to wander. You want to reduce noise in the evening, like loud activities or TVs. You can try to play soft music and adjust the lighting so it's reducing the shadows. You can use validation and redirection with the anxious and increasingly agitated individual. So, visiting, rummaging, and hoarding. So, individuals who wander sometimes enter the rooms of other residents. They may be looking for their own room, maybe they're confused, or maybe they're wishing to interact with others and fulfill that social aspect or need in their life. So sometimes this leads to confrontations with other residents who feel this is an invasion of their privacy. So families of residents may also be concerned if an individual is infringing on the lives or privacies of others. You want to try these strategies. So you can place pictures of a family member or a familiar item outside of the room to help residents find the room that they are looking for. You want to monitor the individuals to keep them out of others' rooms and validate any concerns that they express to distract them from their current behavior and redirect them. It's important to keep wanderers in sight and out of other people's rooms when they are not invited. You want to attempt to find out if they are looking for their own room, the dining room, or whatever room they're looking for. If the wandering appears to be aimless, try to interest them in another activity. You can let them help you with the simple task is a nice distracting activity. So some possible solutions for rummaging and hoarding. You can try to find out what they may be looking for. Often they won't be able to tell you, but it's still worth a shot just to ask them straight out what they're looking for. You can even provide a rummaging room or area and direct the person to that area. Make sure you're always keeping valuables locked up, like glasses, hearing aids, jewelry. Keep it locked up and out of reach. You want to monitor individuals who rummage closely and calmly redirect them to another area when they enter someone else's room. Periodically check the room for individuals who are known to rummage and hoard items. This is necessary when someone's items are missing, but it's also important to the health and safety of the individual. Occasionally, food is hoarded and maybe it's even spilled within their room and then it can spoil. So, if individuals have not been monitored carefully when taking medications, they may spit out and even hide their pills, We can't always identify what needs are driving rummaging and hoarding, but individuals with dementia must be protected from adverse consequences of their behaviors. So, responding to elopement. So, wandering activities in some residents is clearly aimed at getting out of the building. We all have seen some individuals, they just have to get out of here. So, these are the residents that are at risk for elopement, and they pose special challenges for staff, even if they're on a locked unit. So, strategies to ensure the safety of an individual who likes to elope. You want to make certain that all safety devices are working. Safety devices include alarms on your doors, programmed door locks, window locks, or even alarms attached to the residence. It's important that visitors and staff are alert to residents attempting to exit the unit when they open the door. Inform visitors when they come in not to let others exit with them unless they are certain the individual is not a resident. So your resident can even wear identifying apparel, such as a bracelet. If your facility allows, you can utilize a tracking device for residents that are at risk of eloping. So if individuals are still able to read signs and maybe even understand symbols, you can try attaching stop or do not enter signs on the doors. You can even place a dark towel or paint in front of an exit door, which may deter your individual with dementia from exiting the door. Given the visual and spatial problems that may accompany dementia, the individual may perceive the darkened area as a hole, and they're not going to cross it because they have a fear of falling into that hole. So disguising doors with paint or wallpaper or mural may also help. But if people are continuously being seen going in and out of that door, then the disguise is not going to work. So what to do in the event that a resident does elope? So you always want to have a plan in place. All facilities need to have a written and practiced plan in place in the case that a resident elopes. Time is critical, and quick coordinated action may be the difference between life and death of a resident if they elope. So remember, most residents are found within a half mile from the nursing home or community. They tend not to respond if you call their name. They may head for roads or public transportation, and they often hide in any available spot, like bushes or storm drains, empty buildings, and even somewhere within the nursing home. They may not have even left the building. So check the facility first. So remember, people with dementia, they tend to move in the direction of their dominant hand. So search in that direction first. Unless there are greater dangers in another direction, like a busy road or some water, you want to stick checking for their dominant hand. So verbal behaviors. These can include repeated questions, screaming, chanting, moaning, or making inappropriate comments. So causes and triggers, they can be memory loss, where the individual is not able to remember what was just said or done. Boredom, where there's a lack of engagement and or stimulation. Pain, where the individual is in need of a relief from. Anxiety, where they may have a need for reassurance. And even frustration, where the individual can be in need for validation. So the inability to remember what was just done or said contributes to some repetitive behaviors. Often the person is attempting to interact socially, but can't follow or remember what was said. Other times, repeated behaviors or verbal statements may be the result of being bored. When residents do not have enough activities to occupy their time, they are more likely to engage in repetitive behaviors. Pain and anxiety can also result in people engaging in repeated verbal and physical behaviors. In these cases, agitation also may be present. So behaviors associated with dementia can be triggered by physical or emotional conditions in the individual. These are some of the common triggers for nonverbal behaviors. First, we have personal discomfort. Maybe they soiled their underwear, they're sitting in an uncomfortable position, or maybe again, they're hungry. if they're in pain, they have some sort of illness going on, or maybe they're experiencing some sort of hallucination or delusion or fear. So the environment can also play a significant role in triggering or calming behavioral symptoms of dementia. So this slide here suggests that some of the environmental triggers to observe for when a resident is displaying behavioral symptoms. So some causes could be changes in the environment or their routine. Maybe it's too noisy. Maybe there's an activity, but there's too many people present in the room for them. If you as the staff, if you're rushing or you are appearing as if you don't have enough time for them, or they can sense that you are stressed. And distress behaviors by another resident, it can set them off and they maybe need to possibly isolate the behavior. So some strategies to try. If a trigger is identified, you want to try to modify the triggering event. You want to validate, divert, and redirect. You want to maintain eye contact, speak in a clear, gentle tone of voice, and use a gentle touch on the hand or shoulder with residents who enjoy physical contact. So validate what the person is saying by acknowledging the feeling behind the verbalization. Be with the person where they are. Remember, if they are stating something like they need to go to work, don't argue with them about the fact that they no longer work. Just engage in a conversation. Ask them about what it is that they do. Talk to them about their job. Ask them questions like, what do you like most about your job? You can also create like a therapeutic fib, and you can tell them that it's a holiday and they don't have to work that day. But what you don't want to do is to tell them that they no longer work. Okay. So, excuse me, they are living in the past, and that is what is real to them. So, by slowly changing the subject of going to work, you can divert the person's attention and redirect their attention onto other activities. So, giving a person significant attention only when they are displaying undesirable behaviors may reinforce the behavior that you don't want. So, when people are ignored or they don't have much interaction with others, they often do things to attract the attention of others. So, for persons with dementia, sometimes the only attention they get from other people is when they act out. So, if a resident develops a pattern of behavior for which a current cause or trigger cannot be identified, consider that the behavior may have been previously reinforced by staff. If a resident only gets attention when displaying an undesirable behavior, he or she is likely to display that behavior more frequently. So you want to interact with and praise your resident when they are displaying positive behaviors. Provide them opportunities for positive interaction so they can get that verbal praise that they need. So if you are unable to find or determine what the underlying cause is, here's some things you can do. Ignore inappropriate behavior or walk away from the resident. You can watch for times the resident is behaving appropriately and immediately give them some time and attention. Again, that's that verbal praise we just talked about on the last slide. And be tolerant of behavior if it's not posing any type of a safety risk. Now we have aggressive behaviors. So aggressive behaviors, they can either be verbal or even physical. So verbal aggression can be disturbing to staff and other residents and may escalate into physical aggression. Remember, the individual with dementia is not able to control this behavior without assistance. Physically aggressive behaviors can pose dangers for other residents, the staff, and even the residents themselves. It is best to intervene before the resident becomes physically aggressive. So some causes and triggers. So verbal and aggressive behaviors occur due to changes in certain areas of the brain. So it may be totally out of character for your individual. You want to make sure that you are never taking the behavior personally. Typical triggers are frustrations, fear, confusion, or pain or discomfort. You want to watch for escalation, and you must consider your safety and that the safety of your resident. Remember, individuals with dementia, they often have little control over their behavior. Again, because the area of the brain that helps to control their behavior can be damaged as dementia progresses. So that's why you never want to take the behavior personally. Preventing behaviors from escalating and becoming aggressive requires a calm and reassuring approach. It is important to quickly assess the cause of the behavior. If a resident displays physical aggression, it is important to protect them, other residents, and yourself. So, it's important to prevent physical aggression in residents. This requires identifying and eliminating triggers whenever possible. So, a major thing to remember is to consciously move and speak more slowly. Know the history of your residents. For example, like if they have weakness on one side of their body, or if they have some reported anger or pain or abuse, you want to keep that in mind. You want to keep your voice low, but within a range of the person so that the person can still hear you. Remember, it takes the older adult more time to comprehend and respond to what you are saying. And in residents with dementia, that problem is now compounded. So, reducing the likelihood of agitation and aggressive behaviors during personal care and activities. So, you want to make sure you have everything gathered before you're starting your activity. You want to keep the resident warm and as covered up as possible when you're bathing them. You want to use clothes that are easy to put on so that it's not taking longer than need be. And if your resident becomes agitated, you want to immediately stop the activity and speak to the resident in a calm and reassuring voice. You want to back off and give the resident time to calm down if necessary. So these are actions that we have discussed under other behaviors. So the main thing to remember is to call the person by their name. As discussed in the introductory slides, you want to use enduring terms may increase a negative behavior. Older people in general view these terms as irritating, disrespectful, or patronizing, particularly if you are younger than. So these are the don'ts of physical aggression. You do not want to stand within striking distance. You want to make sure that you maintain at least 6 feet of personal space and respect your residents' personal space. Do not try to touch a physically aggressive individual when they are upset and agitated, and don't argue with them. This is not the time to argue and get into a power struggle with your individual. Now, here are some do's. So, you do want to remain calm. You want to be aware and you want to learn your individual's triggers. You do want to assess for and identify new triggers. You want to remove any other residents if there's a potential for danger. You do want to speak in a soft and reassuring voice. And you do want to think of ways to prevent the behavior in the future. So strategies to try with residents who are displaying verbal and physical behaviors. So pet therapy. Well-trained, calm animals can have an amazing effect on behavioral symptoms in people with dementia. They provide warmth and touch that many of the residents need. So it's not uncommon for even the most withdrawn resident to respond to an animal. Pets can also calm upset and agitated residents. You can integrate memories through art. You can play music, invite a musician or a band. So music can often calm the most agitated person, and you can get a response from the person who is unresponsive. Different types of music can accomplish different goals. Remember that individual preferences in music are also important in how the person responds. So music played over various devices may not be as effective as actually having persons play music or sing to residents while interacting with them. Now we're going to discuss inappropriate behaviors and go over some strategies that you can try that may be helpful. So inappropriate behaviors take many forms, but behavior that is most difficult for family and caregivers is usually behavior with sexual overtones. Verbal behaviors may include the use of sexual expletives, making sexually explicit comments to staff, residents, or others, or making statements that can be interpreted as sexual in nature. So, physical behaviors may be directed at others or themselves. They may include touching the genital area or masturbating in public, touching another person in areas considered private, or any touch that is unwelcome, or getting into bed uninvited with another person. Attempts at sexual intercourse are not common, but they may occur. You'll need to understand the inappropriate and suggestive behaviors. So, residents with dementia, they also don't even comprehend what they're saying. They don't comprehend how their behavior is being interpreted by others. And they may have problems that are not related to sexual intentions, which are causing the behavior. So it must be remembered that these behaviors are rarely intentional on the part of the individual with dementia and are the result of damage to the area of the brain that controls their inhibitions. So rarely do these behaviors lead to actual sexual assaults, but they can be highly embarrassing to other residents, staff, and even visitors. It's important, however, to know if the individual has a past history of being a sexual predator or sexually aggressive. In these situations, the behaviors may still be harmless, but still need to be monitored carefully. If the resident appears to be a danger to others, the behaviors will need to be managed with medication and or maybe moved to another unit or facility where the individual can be closely monitored. Uninvited and unwanted direct physical contact with another person that has sexual overtones should be reported immediately to the nurse in charge and the resident's primary care provider. So these behaviors here, these often have causes that are not associated with sexual intentions. So disrobing in public. So disrobing may indicate that maybe they're hot or their clothing is uncomfortable. So if they disrobe in public, try adaptive clothing that makes disrobing more difficult. Um, if they're touching their genitals, that may indicate that there's maybe itching or some pain, or maybe they, in their past life, they were a baseball player. So that's something that, a baseball player, when they're on the mound, they tend to, touch themselves in weird ways. So it could just be something from their past. Getting into bed with other residents, uninvited, of course, that's usually done for human contact and companionship. Remember, many of your residents slept with someone else for the majority part of their life. So rarely is there an attempt to have sexual intercourse, but the possibility still exists. So if your individual urinates in public, urinating in public often results from the individual not being able to distinguish other objects from the toilet. So in the case of people, particularly men, who worked outside most of their lives, it may have been a common practice to urinate in places outside of a bathroom. Usually, this behavior can be reduced with more frequent toileting and close observation. If they are fondling or masturbating in public, this may be an indication of a sexual need. So, people with dementia may still have an interest in sex. So, occasionally, certain medications can heighten this need. Taking the person to their room and allowing privacy is one solution. If the problem becomes difficult to manage, there are medications that can lower your individual sex drive. And some residents with dementia maintain an interest and capacity for sexual intercourse. Married couples should be given the privacy to maintain intimate relations if both consent. And residents who are not married or may have forgotten that they are married and to other people, and maybe they develop a relationship with another resident, issues of sexual behavior become more complicated then. It is important to know your policies within your specific organization if that is to occur. Working with residents who attempt to inappropriately touch you is difficult, but it should be handled with a professional demeanor. If you encounter a situation where a resident attempts to touch you inappropriately, don't scold or berate the individual. Try to figure out what triggered the behavior. Calmly and firmly tell the resident that the behavior is not appropriate and move away. If it consistently occurs when you are doing personal care, have someone else assigned to that care. The gender of the person assigned may need to be taken into consideration. Also, the resident's sexual preference, and you'll also want to divert and redirect the person's attention. If you have a resident, again, that's inappropriately touching or making advances to another resident, you can try to physically separate the individuals, gently and firmly indicate the behavior is inappropriate and remind them of boundaries, divert the resident and redirect them to another activity, keep them in view and immediately intervene if it appears that they are approaching another resident. And again, as the last offense, medication can be considered if it's not easily managed. So these here are just some general rules that should be followed at all times to reduce the likelihood of behavioral symptoms. You want to develop and maintain a simple daily routine. Be aware that there can be changes. Keep the environment calm. Correct sensory deficits. Use hearing aids, eyeglasses, and dentures. And use distraction to divert the residents from precipitating events. Precipitating events, excuse me. Again, you want to consider the resident's personal preference for routines, be flexible, install safety measures, simplify bathing and dressing, and provide regular daily activities and structure. So your responsibility in documentation, you want to document everything. Document the behavior, be specific in your documentation. You want to include what was occurring before the behavior happened, what were some signs of physical and emotional distress, any type of characteristics of the physical and social environment, and what was done to address the behavior. And lastly, and most importantly, you want to document if whatever it was that you tried, if it worked, okay? And then always, always remember that the person is not the problem. The problem is the need or feeling that the person is trying to communicate with their behavior. And that is all I have for you today. Here are your references. And please take a moment. You can use your phone to use this QR code. You can scan it and you can complete a brief survey in regards to our training. And that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for attending our training today. We look forward to seeing you guys next month.
Thank you, Letitia.
No problem. You guys have a good one.